Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about 3 grammar skills that I did not know in high school, and I wish I did because I didn't learn these grammar skills until I was an English major in college. And had I known them in high school, I think things would have been a little bit easier when it came to writing essays. So my hope is that by telling you about these skills, it will help you not only on your essays, but also on either the ACT or the SAT, because every once in a while, these skills creep in there into those multiple choice questions. An unclear antecedent is basically when you have a demonstrative pronoun, so this, that, these, or those, and you don't have a noun after it. So a lot of teachers will write this what on your paper, but they won't actually tell you it's called an unclear antecedent. So instead of saying this shows, you need to say something like this concept shows. Now to a lot of students, they're like, yeah, but it's really obvious what I'm talking about. Grammatically, it's not, so you need to put a noun after this, that, these, those, and problem solved. In high school, I knew about 2 correlating conjunctions. I had no clue that's what they were called, but I knew about either or and neither nor. What I didn't realize was that there were other pairs, for instance, not only, but also, and then just as, and so too. So one thing to keep in mind, and I've seen this done on the SAT a few times, but it's not a very highly tested skill. You need to understand that you can't mix and match pairings, or you can't alter the pairing. So for instance, we cannot say not only and also, it has to be but also. You also can't drop and say like not only also, it has to be but also. And then lastly, you don't want to split it. So you don't want it to say not only and then but it also. It needs to say not only but also it. So if there's going to be any kind of pronoun, it needs to be after it, not in between the but and the also. Okay, so this next concept can be a bit tricky for students because sometimes it's hard to remember which one is an appositive and which one is a non-restrictive clause. I'll explain the difference, but basically you need to understand whether or not the info is essential. So an appositive phrase is a descriptive phrase and it doesn't contain a verb. So it's usually like someone's title or something. So we'll see an example of that here in a second. But basically the idea is it's put between 2 commas and you can remove it from the sentence. So for instance, it says Katie, the team captain, plays center back. So we can remove the team captain and the sentence would read Katie plays center back. It still makes sense, so it's an appositive phrase. Now, a non-restrictive clause is a little bit different. It's not essential to the sentence. Now, sometimes we see it with the word who. So I'll show you an example where we could still, like the previous example, take that extra information out. So we have another Katie sentence. So Katie, who majored in French, works as an interpreter for the United Nations. So we don't actually need to know that she majored in French. Like, it's nice to know that, but we could take that part out and the sentence is still correct. And so in this case, it's a non-restrictive clause. It's not restricting the sentence. We don't need it. So that's why we put it in between 2 commas. A restrictive clause does not have commas because you do need it in order for the sentence to make sense. It has to stay in there. And so we'll see a similar sentence here. It has the word who, but it says people who work out regularly. Okay, so in this case, we still have who, but we can't take that part out. So we consider that restrictive. It needs to stay in there. Now, this example right here where it talks about an incorrect sentence, I want to explain very briefly why it's incorrect because I did see this on at least one recent ACT and one SAT practice test that were released. So basically, if you have the person's name and then their title, the title is not the essential part of the sentence. So for instance, Katie, and then the fact that she's a captain, like that's a title. So we don't necessarily need to know that. So that can, like the phrase captain can be put in between 2 commas. However, if it was flipped the other way and it said something like the captain Katie, then that would be incorrect because a name, some kind of like proper noun, is considered essential, whereas a title is not. So if we do name and then title, the title can go in between 2 commas. If we do title and then name, there are not commas around the name because we cannot remove the name from the sentence. And so I have seen that done a few different times on official College Board multiple choice questions. And I've had students ask, well, wait a minute, like, why are we not putting it in between 2 commas here? Well, that's why. So just remember, if it's name and then title, then we put the commas. If it's title and then name, we don't. Now, they're not going to really usually ask you, like, they'll either do it one way or the other. They don't try to trick you too much with that type of question. So, like, I have seen it to where kids have said, wait a minute, I want to put a comma on either side of this, but there isn't an answer choice that lets me. Why is that? So the good news is that, like, they're not actually giving it to you, like, in a way that would sort of trick you, but it makes you stop and think, and then, like, it's a little bit of a panicking situation for some students when they're like, wait a minute, the answer that I wanted is not here, and I don't understand why. And so there is an expression, when in doubt, leave the comma out, and I agree with that to a certain extent. I think it applies to certain situations. This would be one of them. All right, guys, there you have it. Those are 3 skills that I did not know in high school. And so I was actually a really strong English student in high school. I loved writing essays. I was kind of a nerd like that. And so it was really stressful and also really intriguing to me when I learned these in college. And I remember thinking, like, why on earth did our teacher not emphasize this? Now, as a teacher myself, I can say that, you know, sometimes there's just so much that we have to cram into our lessons that sometimes little things slip through the cracks, and maybe these terms or these concepts were those things. But my hope is that my students don't feel like that when they get to college. I don't want them to be like, wait a minute, she never taught us this. And so these are 3 skills that are pretty minor. I left one big one off, and that is active and passive voice. I did not know that in high school, but that to me is going to be a separate video because it is such an important concept. I work on with my students on that all the time. Like, how do we write an active voice? And so that will be a separate video. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to be coming out with some new content related to the ACT, the SAT, and both AP Lit and AP Lang. So if you are enrolled in any of those classes or you're registered for an upcoming test, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe, because I want to make sure that my content is useful, not just to my own students, but to anyone out there who also randomly finds these videos. So until next time, guys, happy writing.